Summer Family by Monica Marino. Anthony held out his learner's permit and boarding pass for the TSA agent, who appraised him over the rims of her glasses. "And where are you headed today, Mr. Valverde?" She pronounced it Valverde, as if she either never heard the name before, despite living in California, or wanted to make some sort of rhetorical point by pronouncing it however she felt like pronouncing it, or, most likely, was just too overworked to bother trying to pronounce it intelligibly. "To Texas to spend the summer with my dad," he replied. "Ma'am," he remembered to say belatedly. The agent raised an eyebrow, as though she'd also never heard of divorce, but then squiggled her approval on the boarding pass and hinted everything back to Anthony. Her "have a nice trip" signaled that their interaction had concluded. After all the awkwardness of removing his shoes, taking out his electronics, standing in a skydiving pose for the body scan, and being pulled out of line and wanted because he was just lucky that way was the explanation, he glanced back past the snaking line of travelers waiting to pass through security. There was his mom, looking impossibly tiny, except for her brimming eyes. He smiled slightly, just with his mouth, and raised a hand in farewell. Wedged between a gruff businessman who immediately closed the window and then spread himself and his belongings halfway into Anthony's seat, and a lady with flowing white hair and clothing to match who wouldn't stop smiling beatifically at him, Anthony put in his earbuds and feigned sleep. Over New Mexico, the seatbelt light pinged on a second before the plane jolted, then lurched, then settled into a seasick bouncing. The businessman clutched his laptop, the lady in white closed her eyes and breathed deeply, and between them, Anthony turned up the music. Anthony knew his way to ground transportation in the small, sprawling airport. He'd been making this trip alone every summer for 4 years. He wasn't even nervous anymore about climbing into a rideshare. As he grew older, in fact, he was finding that the drivers were more nervous about him than he was about them. He spent most of the ride trying to reassure this driver that he was an ordinary, almost junior at a good school, responsible and friendly, and most definitely not about to carjack her. Even so, he sensed her relief when she pulled up next to his father's upscale condo building, and not some empty lot in a sketchy part of the city. He punched in the door code he had memorized and flicked on the lights in his father's empty condominium. After depositing his backpack in the spare room that would be his for the summer, he glanced around the spotless modern kitchen. Maybe there would at least be a note welcoming him and letting him know where to find things, or maybe his father would have stocked the pantry and refrigerator with his favorite foods, assuming he remembered what those were. But all Anthony could find was an energy bar, which he wolfed down without tasting. He wasn't going to give up on somehow forging a connection with his dad, but Anthony was relieved to have taken the first step in making his own family this summer. He put in his earbuds and watched as the lights below him receded until clouds enveloped the plane.